Vodafone presents the pre-match.
It's always with great pleasure I get to do this at the end of every single Katowice. It's our grand final, and it is going to be soO going up against Stats to find out who walks away with $150,000 in their pocket at the very end. Joining me, I have Pig and Rotterdam to try and break down what is about to ensue here. soO versus Stats. Gentlemen, starting with you, Pig. The grand final, what do you think?
I think it's been a long road here. There were people at the start of the tournament saying Stats had been eliminated from GSL. They thought maybe he was showing a little bit of weakness. Well, he's shut them up. He's shown incredible play throughout. He dominated the group stage. And, I mean, he just got through a very tough opponent there in Dark. Stats is coming out, arm swinging and showing a level of Protoss play which we haven't seen from any of the other Protoss players in this tournament.
Total agreement. There's a lot of good Protoss players here, and they all have their own styles and stuff. But if I compare even some of the very best, like the Zest and the heroes out there, Stats seems like he's on a different level. He seems like he's playing StarCraft II without Fog of War. He's making so many correct calls. By only seeing a little bit, he moves out when you're worried, but he knows how long he can stick around. I love everything he's done. And let's not forget, Stats didn't even qualify for this tournament. He showed up for the offline qualifier, so he even had to go through pretty tough brackets. A lot of top Koreans in the past failed to make it through those brackets.
Definitely, yeah.
Not Stats. He did it with winning 3 series in a row. He's looked absolutely phenomenal all tournament long.
Last year, he didn't qualify through the offline qualifier. He came and was unable to do so. That's how tough those brackets can be. But this time, complete role reversal of the situation. Stats now finds himself in the grand final. And I think when you look at the names, one of like Stat, you expect him now to be in these grand finals. We've seen it time and time again, but he hasn't been able to round it out on some of those bigger stages.
You know, it's fascinating because StarCraft's reached a point where we've seen the players at the top now. They're not kind of a flash in the pan, single finals appearance, right? Stats we saw as one of the most consistent players for years and years, and he worked up from being a top 8 guy to being the guy who was hitting the semifinals all of the time a few years ago. And now it's gone not just semifinals and finals appearances, but he's closing them out. He's winning grand finals. Serral was a thorn in his side last year, denied him a couple of championships, including the World Championship.
Absolutely.
But Stats, he's the whole package Protoss. He's defensive. His ability, as Roddy said, to feel like he sees the whole map. He can create pressure on the map and then get home at the right time without losing his units. I feel like Stats here brings a range of play which none of the other players do, and that's why he's so hard to crack as a Zerg opponent.
Does soO have to be scared of watching that previous series against Dark?
Yes, not just because Stats looked very good, but also because Dark actually played pretty damn similar to the way that soO has been playing in this tournament. And I mean, soO is amazing, but so is Dark. And Stats just completely dismantled this style. He showed great understanding of the strengths of his armies in certain phases of the game.
Yep.
If I was soO, I'd be very worried. Not just about the fact that I have to go up against world's best Protoss, but also world's best Protoss who seems very capable of dealing with the style that he's been using.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about the other player on the other side, of course. soO, the most prolific second-place player of all time. He has won a championship, but the amount of second places he has had is parallel to no one. He's been in so many finals. It's actually a testament to his consistency.
Yeah, so many years of making it to the grand finals, and I feel like there's so many fans out there. I know myself, I've watched him, I've cheered for him, and I've felt the highest highs and inevitably the lowest lows whenever he falls just short. It's happened so many times before. He is so solid, so powerful. I feel like, I say it again and again, I sound like a broken record. He's decisive. soO is unafraid to commit to attacks where other players would back out of, and that does catch his opponents off guard, and sometimes he bops them and he makes it look somewhat simple. I feel like, you know, he dominated against Hero before because of that decisiveness, his ability to say, you're going to be aggressive, I'm going to make a gigantic army, I'm going to wait for you to move across the map, and then I'm going to slap it down. And it was as simple as that in most of those games.
Roddy?
It would absolutely be a fairy tale if out of all the tournaments where soO often looked like the best player in the tournament and he didn't make it in the end because he kept losing in those finals, if out of all those tournaments this is suddenly the one he wins. Because where Stats look good all week long, soO actually looked a little more bumpy. Sure, he made it through the offline qualifiers as well, and that's always a good way to start your week. But in the group stage, soO started off 0-3. But this also goes to show how strong he is mentally. There are so many players that will give up the moment they're 0-3. I can never advance anymore. soO had one job and one job only. That's a 2-0 and a 2-0, and then hope that the other results are on your side. That somehow happened. He somehow squeezed into the bracket, The moment we did enter the bracket, though, it was a completely different soO.
Yeah.
He looked so much better than he did in that group stage. So it would be kind of ironic if out of all the tournaments he wins the one where he was almost out already.
Yeah. I mean, he did take down the world champion in soO, which is a feather in his cap already. Never mind anything else, kind of ending that tournament winning streak of the world champion. And then the flip side question to what I asked before of, should soO be worried about Stats' previous game? I was going to ask, should Stats be worried about soO's previous game? But soO versus Hero was just kind of a mismatch, right? And it shouldn't worry Stats too much here.
Well, it was interesting because it was like Stats played some similar styles to Hero, but it was the next level, the next evolution of it. It was like, okay, I forced you to be very defensive. I forced you to build too many units. Guess what? I'm going to pull back. And I'm going to just defend your assault. I'm going to take these perfect little engagements in the middle where I'll shave off units with force fields and then withdraw. That's what Hero was lacking in his series against soO, and it's why soO was able to just kind of slap him down, in that very clear, decisive fashion. So I feel like for soO here, the secret to his success against Stats is in the form of backstabs, counterattacks. I feel like Stats, if he's allowed to move out with his army, force an over-response, and then pull back while having the tech advantage and a good economy, that's comfort zone. I think you need to surprise him a little bit. You need to use your maneuvering. We keep talking about Nidus Worms, and they keep not happening towards the end of this tournament. Maybe.
Not at the moment, no.
Maybe. But even just Ling run buys, right? When you're moving out with those attacks, Ling run buys, Roaches running in and hitting the third base, drops as well. These are all maneuvers which could work for soO.
Well, gentlemen, it is time here to get our grand finals underway for the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice. Let's head over to the stage.
Katowice, it is time! 76 players gathered here in Katowice, Poland with a simple dream. A dream to become a StarCraft II champion. After a week of non-stop action, we've gone from 76 players down to just 2. And these 2 fight not just for the money, not just for this trophy. They fight to fulfill their dream of becoming a StarCraft II champion in front of all of you guys here in the Spodek Arena. So I ask you guys, are you ready? Please welcome your grand finalists, it's soO and Stats.
Dzień dobry, Katowice. Let's get into it. The grand finale of this beautiful Tick-State tournament is about to commence between Stats, the greatest Protoss in the world, and soO, who's having another roll of the dice to see if he can get that championship.
It's got to be one of the most amazing stories in all of StarCraft. He's been in a final 11 times. Well, this is 11th one, excuse me. He's won one of them, but lost 9. And he just keeps getting back there because he's one of the absolute best players, but there just seems to always be somebody else getting in the way of that. But here he's defeated Serral, the player that nobody else could beat, and he said he could do it. He knew he could do it, and it's got him to this spot right here, right now. I love what the guys said at the desk. They broke it down really well. They're both playing red hot Stats all tournament long. Nobody's really stood up to him, and it has not been close. soO almost didn't even make it to this stage of the tournament, but in some way, Maynard, that in and of itself can be even the hotter hand, right? He's faced death, he's had his back up against the wall, and yet he's still here.
He certainly is. He's had his brush here, but soO will have to change his fate. He'll have to change history on this stage right now. Normally, Stats is the guy to get the better of him at these local events. Yes, soO does have a winning record, but a lot of those are online results. When it comes to the big stage, when it comes to the big money matches, Stats is always the one to come out on top, and soO needs to change things up here to finally make that dream come true for that big trophy up there on stage.
It's such a big deal. This is an amazing, amazing final. I mean, one of the things we didn't really touch on too much, the winner auto seeds into BlizzCon, into the grand final. You're going to be going off and winning money guaranteed there as well, but also playing for even more life-changing money and the honor of being someone that could maybe become the next world champion. It's all there. Everything is up. It's up for grabs. Both these players can do it. I love, again, the breakdown at the desk. They talked about this. There's no one player that is the unbeatable one, right? We don't look at this and say stats, the clear 80-20 favorite. There's nothing soO can do. Maybe he can pull off a miracle, or vice versa. It's not like that. It's pretty darn close. And both these players have made their respective opponents in this bracket portion of the tournament look a little bit silly. Well, someone's got to give. Someone's either got to be made to look silly here, or we're going to have a bloodbath.
Both of these players have been second place too many times for their liking. And it's so good to see that the streak is about to end for at least one of these gentlemen on stage who have absolutely paid their way. I mean, you touched on it, Jeff. We're going to have a free seat to the global finals for one of these two guys. But not only that, $150,000. That is so much money. An unfathomable amount of money there for either of these players. Stats is actually no stranger to this stage. He made the grand final in 2017 in a very, very close best-of-7 against TY, his teammate, who ended up taking it in the end. TY, of course, as we know, eliminated it earlier on in the round of 12, but Stats stood the test of time, making it all the way to the top.
Yeah, in some way, it's also amazing how good these guys are, right, too, because we get to look back at these other major tournaments, and guess what? It's a bunch of the same players fighting against the same players. Very often, these guys remain good for many, many years, and in many cases, get even better. And I would say Stats and soO, sitting here before us, these are guys approaching their final form. soO looked unstoppable, so did Stats. They're both playing better and better as we go. But I think we should touch on this as well. So a little bit of house cleaning here. It is going to be a best-of-7 in this grand final. That means every single map is up for grabs. And one of the people I'd love to give a little bit of a shout out there. That ticker, a lot of the information we've been kind of talking about that's going on at the bottom of the screen is coming from Wax Angel, a big StarCraft guy, and there's some of these maps that these players have been avoiding, like the Plague. It's a little bit of a weakness, and what I love about the grand final is that if it does go the distance, or if it goes a little bit further than any other best of we've had so far, you start to have to see these hurdles that these players know about within themselves. They have to overcome it, or they have to pad themselves well enough that maybe that weakness can be absorbed or something like that. The best of 7 is a completely different animal. We haven't seen it yet in this tournament, and I love it.
That's a really good point. There are so many features on these maps in the ladder map pool and in this tournament map pool where there are shorter rush distance. Some maps have got giant space. Some maps have got high ground at the front of their third base. Some maps are so much easier to defend, where others, you're forced to go a certain strategy to play to your race's strengths against them. We saw Stats going for Phoenix play on Automaton, which is normally a map that's so free and easy for Zerg to have the space that they need to breathe. And then, of course, with the Phoenixes, you have that extra bit of speed, an extra bit of map presence to be able to actually have a bit more of a shot as a Protoss on that map, where generally you'd have a bit more of a rougher time.
And even stylistically, we got to see both these guys play a ZVP and PvZ respectively before this, so we kind of already know what they're thinking, right? You don't play the semifinal saying, yeah, but my real builds are coming out in the grand final. You don't play it that way.
No.
It was one-sided, but those guys they played before are no slouches, so we've already seen kind of their ideas of this matchup. And I love what Rotterdam set up there. A little bit of similarities between Dark and soO, and that's kind of the way it goes. But on the flip side, Stats poses a lot of issues as well. You talked about Phoenix play, you talked about the various different builds you can do on some of these maps, and that's the scary prospect that Stats brings to the table. He can do it all. He'll be very defensive, he can be offensive, he can be all-in-y, and we kind of saw that in his previous match as well, right? It was him attacking, but I feel like the determining factor, the difference between him and Hero in that success versus loss, was his ability to kind of gauge where he's at in the game off of attacking, and that makes him a completely different animal. It's not all about the attack and can you defend it. It's more about, I'm attacking you, oh, it's not the right time, I'll pull back, the ebb and flow of that. It's pretty intimidating.
Yeah, Stats has got the maturity to be able to take the foot off the gas, as it were, and pull back and change his strategy on the fly within milliseconds. Both these players, the most similar thing between them, and I'm sorry guys, just soO is getting everything set up on stage here, want conditions to be perfect for him. The most similar thing between both these players to me is that if both of them smell a weakness, they will capitalize on it immediately. Yep. soO has shown us in every single matchup, whether it be ZVT or ZVP, when he smells weakness, he will go for it. He won't hesitate. Yeah. He can actually just end games early. Stats, like you mentioned, exact same deal. He showed it against Dark. If Dark is showing weakness, if he's going for a flimsier unit comp, or he's trying to power ahead into something, and there is a window for the Protoss to come and attack him, there is no way Stats rests on his hands and watches that window close.
Yeah, same as soO. I feel like, we often talk about star sense with these amazing StarCraft players, and that encompasses a lot of things, but one of the things it definitely does encompass is their ability to be like, this is actually my moment. If I pounce right now on this weakness, I'll be able to win. And having that as Pig would say, decisiveness, that ability to kind of pounce on that moment in time, is a lot of the reasons why we continuously see them get here. And I mean, we talked a lot about this. Stats himself has had a lot of second places. You can look at Cyril as being the great victimizer there, right? He stopped him from winning some of these massive tournaments in 2018, going into 2019. Same with soO. But a lot of the reasons why we even get to talk about that is because they're constantly in finals. Well, in this final, both these players want that so much. They have those instincts. It's an absolute treat to see the two of them go head to head, right? Like, we had some mismatches. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna lean out there. I don't think this is a mismatch. I think this is an amazing collision. If we get a Game 7, I wouldn't be that surprised, and I would love it.
I would too. I mean, I always want every series to go all the way to the ace match, even if it does make it a 14-hour day like the round of 12 potentially could have been. But of course, we speed run that bracket as history. All you guys would have known. There was a lot of 3-0s there. This one, I mean, sure, there is potential there for maybe a 4-0. I would say if it was going to be, it would probably be Stats. He was looking so strong in that last match, and he's off the back of a great series as well. So he's got that adrenaline. He's got it pumping through his veins. He's fresh off the back of a big win against a great Zerg. soO's had a little bit of time to cool down and just sort of think about his situation a little bit more, which maybe helps him out. Some players are momentum-based. Some players like to take it easy and have a bit of a think. And it looks like both players are all set and ready to go. No doubt the first game is about to begin.
Yep, and there they are. We can see it, we can feel it. It's about to happen, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys are ready. Today, on this day, someone is going to go home a champion. The other player will be denied. Both players will be handsomely rewarded, and they will continue on their year knowing that they've gotten here this far. It's amazing.
It certainly is, Jeff. And let's get into game number 1 between these two Protoss and Zerg Titans. These Korean monsters. I cannot wait to get it underway. soO has just scraped into this grand final, or into the group rather, but I gotta say, round of 12, that's when he just started to look like the guy I expected. I was picking soO to go well in this final, didn't know he'd make it this far, but he is just incredible and it's well deserved. Speaking of which, on the far right spawn here of Automaton, this is Team Chivo's soO! And on the far left, this, the Splice Protoss in the red, he is Stats!
Both players bumping and jiving just a little bit. There's a lot of energy here. This is an absolutely amazing finals. Let's talk about the map here a little bit. This is one of the ones that's been shown in all the best of 3s, even in the best of 5s. It's a very popular map. There's a lot of kind of space around the main base. Not bad for blinking, good warp prism play. You got to be on top of that. But on the flip side, and I know we kind of make a joke of this almost, Nidus play, pretty common as well, right? If you don't spread out your buildings, you don't see every corner, that can sneak up on you. After that, your third, your fourth base, pretty okay, especially the third base. Very securable, a lot of choke points. It's that fourth base where it starts to get a little bit dicey. We can see here on the screen that's typically the one you kind of go for, but there's a lot of paths around that. There's a lot of paths to get through that. If you do control it, however, you can get access to a gold base pretty quickly. Not too bad for either a Protoss or Zerg.
And this is actually part of the reason why I feel like Zerg can actually be so powerful in this map sometimes, because you have a high ground base and that's all well and good, but there's so much space around it and so many attack paths, so that a big flood of Lings or a big Hydra of Ling Bane attack, which soO likes to do in this matchup, could actually just surround and overwhelm a Protoss position. You are so close to your main and you can use the Warp Prism to great effect. Lots of strengths and weaknesses on this map. One of the better maps, I think, in the last couple seasons. We're seeing Warp Gate straight away here from Stats, so potentially not going to be a Stargate opening.
Yeah, it is one of those things where you can get it started right away and take advantage of the fact that it recently became a little bit of a quicker upgrade. But as you pointed out, Mr. Maynard, there it is. It's going to be a Twilight Council inside the main. Now, it is an adept off that gateway, and this is early pressure. It's good scouting intel, all that kind of stuff. But it cannot stop an Overlord from scouting further into the base. So it's going to be a question of, does soO want to get really aggressive? Or does he want to take advantage of the fact that there is kind of a high ground there? Well, I'm going to hold off there. It's going to make a little bit more of a deep dive into the base. We'll see how far he goes. And you can see the Stalker coming off that gateway as well. Shutting that down would be really nice. Now, spotting the Twilight Council here is interesting, right? Because very often we've seen Archon drop that's not that weird. But unless we see a Robo, well, there it is. There's the Robo. So it should be an Archon drop developing here for us.
Yeah, it's sort of the big question now is just what kind of Archon drop is it going to be? Get in there, man. Come on, come on. It's a little bit further.
He's bobbing and weaving like, do I want the information? Do I though?
He gets in there and he does see the Twilight Council. Hasn't seen the Dark Shrine yet. It's been placed in the natural. The Overlord's shortly about to go down. Looks like he won't actually see it. I think that Overlord's going to die just before he gets in range of it. But with the Cloak Boys, with these DTs, you can actually do a little bit of damage before the Spore Crawlers get down. There's always a window for the Dark Templar, but there are some Protosses out there that are just a little bit less reliant on, you know, I guess like an earlier attack and more reliant on their Archon Prism control that would just get straight into the Archon stage.
And I already like this mix-up a little bit from stats. You'll have to forgive me for not remembering perfectly, but I think he did Templar Archives drops earlier, and even if he didn't, if he did do the Dark Shrine, he wasn't very aggressive with the Dark Templar. They don't stick out in my mind, but the point is, soO got to watch that PVZ semifinal. He got to kind of gauge it and say, this is what I think is going to be coming. And already with that Twilight Council, he's saying it's Archon drop, but sometimes, especially in these big matches, you'll cut a few corners. Now, will he cut an Overseer or Spore Crawlers? I don't know that he's going to be that aggressive, but it is a potential, and it could be something that we see Stats trying to mix up here as well.
He hasn't got the Spores just yet. Of course, there is still time to be able to get them if he needs it. You can see that he's got a lair, he's got a Roach Warren. Yeah, making an Overseer, that's going to be fantastic. Obviously, the Overseer needs to be in position if there's Dark Templar, so if it's in the wrong place, then bada bing, bada boom, that Dark Templar will find damage.
Look at the map, though.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go.
Wow.
It's just a full spread of everything. The Ling sees it for a second. Now, often when this gets scouted, you're going to make the Archons right away. To kind of delay the Archon phase and go straight into Dark Templar is a huge risk, and you can see that respect from Stats. He says, nope, you spotted me. It's probably too much of a crazy leverage to think that you wouldn't, so I'm just going to go for it with the Archons.
And with that Roach tech, soO has the Roaches, which are so important to be able to stand toe-to-toe with the Archons. The Queen's job here to try and kill the Warp Prism. One Queen getting a little bit low. The Roaches are off creep a little bit, but nice control from soO, keeping these Roaches alive against these Archons. Stats getting deflected.
I mean, a little bit of a song and dance right there, but you do have to do damage as Stats. I mean, not have is maybe too strong of a word. You really want to, okay? This is not like you're scouting Reaper or Adept where if you get damage, that's really nice. These are Archons. This is meant to fight back creeps. We are seeing that right here. But you're supposed to be killing Queens, like you pointed out, killing a few Roaches. He only killed the one Roach, so there is still more time to go here. But keep your eye on that. If this gets deflected that well throughout, it's going to be really good for soO.
Well, soO's made a lot of Roaches here. Hello. Yeah. Caught and caught it. Takes one out. So a couple of these Roaches are going to go down to these Archons if he stands and fights. soO is losing a few Roaches. He made a big round of them, but he's droning behind it as well. I was getting a little bit worried there, thinking that maybe soO wanted to be aggressive with just pure Roach. Attacking into Stats as natural or third would be a little bit tough at this moment as the Immortals are starting to get up there.
Yes, absolutely. Losing the 1DT there by the... Oh, I love this. Okay, so both these players, again, they know. You watched me, I watched you, you know, I know, you know, right? Like, it's getting kind of confusing to keep track of that, but the point is, you got to mix things up a little bit. That Spire is definitely that. So the Roaches are making their way across the map. If they get the cancellation on the third, that's fantastic. Meanwhile, the Archons are going to have a little bit of play inside the main. Warp Prism getting low, though, which means its ability to stay here is quite low. It's just sentries. There's not much over. I think an Immortal might be waddling its way over, but even killing the sentries would be a big deal, Maynard.
They certainly would. There's 100 gas per sentry that he takes out here. More Roaches coming in from soO. A couple of them on break. Time to get back to work. In they go, attacking into that third base. Double Immortal from the natural, though. Can he pull back? He might have to recall the Warp Prism. It's actually just flying home here.
Wow, even getting the Immortal that dies there. It is being sentries being remade. Another Immortal is going to fall. Now look. There's not more Roaches coming across the map. He did just make 14 more. I think that's more of a kind of a defensive thing. You don't see a string of blue coming over here, but Maynard, I have to key in on this. By killing those sentries and forcing him to remake them with a Muta switch potentially coming down the pipe, that means things like your Archons, your Stalkers, the things that combat those Mutas are going to be at a low. Now, Spire finishes here, and I am a little bit curious about the fact that he did make these Roaches, because I'm getting really excited about the potential switch. But I kind of think he's not going to do it now, which is a little... Well, okay, there's a few Mutas.
There are a few Mutas, so the big thing I want to look at here is he going to get like a big Muta switch?
Yeah.
Or, like, is he going to go for tons of Mutas? Or is he just going to get enough to deal with the Warp Prism and then switch out of it? Some Zergs out there, it's a little bit old school. They get like a half a dozen Mutas and just kill the Warp Prism, stop this Archon shenaniganry, and then go on from there. soO does have them on the way. These Archons finding a bit more damage there, a few more drones, and he's out again.
Yeah, but they leave just before the 3 Mutas would have popped out of the main, which is a little... The timing, you know, I mean, this game's got so many things clicking and clacking, and it's just amazing that in that little couple of seconds, because if he sees that, it's a big deal, but he already has the can in the main. Is there at the, I mean, he's got Archons parked in the main. Does he just know? Is there a can at the natural and third as well? Is he just straight up?
Well, Roddy did mention that he has the ability to know the whole map, so maybe he just has a special brain. But he actually does seem to be very, very prepared for these Mutas. Losing a probe here and there. One thing I got to point out as well, while this Mutalist harassment tries to find probe damage, is that there's just the first Evo chamber coming now for soO.
Yeah.
And Stats is halfway through having plus to attack. which is going to make his army, while it may be smaller, a lot more powerful.
And he's still maxing out on roaches. Now, the army of stats has just been immortal after immortal after immortal, and like you point out, the upgrade advantage is strongly there. It's a good thing soO didn't go mass mutas, because they just wouldn't have done much there, right? The Archons back at home would have shut that down real hard. But Stats is looking at this and saying, look, your mutas did nothing. Yes, you deflected me in the middle of the map, but I still saw mostly roaches. I think I have a really strong army right now, and he would be right. soO's amassing roaches and ravage in the middle of the map, but that's it. They're not supported by much else.
Honestly, this could potentially be a bit of an anti-timing here for Stats. If soO comes in before +2 is done and just overwhelms with sheer numbers, he is up of 50, 60 army supply right now, collapsing onto this army of the Protoss. Nice force fields and left from Stats though. Corrosive Files to break them down. The Warp Prism reinforcing this position. Never mind, this Protoss army is doing so much to this army of soO, which seems to be split into pieces.
Oh my god, he pulls back the Wounded Immortals. He's continuing to let them fire freely. Go ahead and fight my Zealots. If Big Daddy Immortals are behind that, chucking out damage, then you are not going to be winning this fight. Stats closes the gap. Maynard said it was about a 50-60 supply advantage in army. Well, guess what? It's about 14 right now, and you're remaxing on roaches against an army that lost no Immortals right there. So every warp in of Sentries, Archon, Zealots, whatever, that's disposable. If the base of Immortals remains, this kind of fire base is going to win the game.
This is bad for soO. He had a chance there, but the army, the engagement just didn't seem to be that well handled by soO. And now he just doesn't really have a good army anymore. He's getting 11 more roaches. He's making lings. All well and good to get your army supply as good and high as you can, but this army is so high attack. It's so much more powerful, so much more punch for punch. And he's denying a lot of creep as well, which is going to make it hard for the Zerg to engage.
He's denying creep. He can expand behind this. He can tech switch behind this if he wants. Of course, that's money away from this army, and he thinks he can win with this army, so why not? But soO's going to come in here and try to engage, and again, he's mostly off creep. The Immortals in the back dealing out the damage. The Archon base is growing as well, and that's worth mentioning, right? If the Archon count gets up to like 6, 7, 8, 9, that's more AoE, that's more buffer, and here we go, Maynard.
And he gets one Archon there, and the Vials are actually connecting all right, but it just doesn't seem to be enough Zerg here. Just way too much Protoss. Stats almost just A-moving through this army with a few force fields for good measure. Yeah, just dodging these Vials very nicely. I just don't see how Stats get stopped here in control. I'm trying to see something for soO, like clutching at anything for soO right now, but I don't see it.
No, Stats he's just a surgeon about this. He's patiently waiting. He's taking the right fights. He's got +3 attack nearing completion. Look at that production tab. Nothing for the Zerg. It's all about just trying to survive, but he's making units that don't fight particularly well here. Here come all the Queens. Fortfield's going down. This fight's gonna be a sticker right now, and the Immortals doing all the damage. soO, you do not have much left, my friend. There's more Immortals than just about any roaches. GG is called, and first blood goes to Stats.
Very nicely done. It looked a little dicey in the early stages of the game, but you just see him talking to himself a little bit there. But he just managed to put a clinic on PVZ in the last half of that game. That was beautiful stuff. I feel like a couple of mistakes there from soO. Hopefully he can tighten his belt and stop those happening. I mean, this is the grand finale. You can't really make mistakes, especially against a player like Stats who will just capitalize on them 100% of the time.
There is so much going on here. I wish we could do a 5-hour show to unpack this. It looks like the Protoss moves out with an army and wins, right? Wrong. He goes out there, he's taking favorable engagements. He was even using sight blockers in that fight against the Roaches and Ravagers, dropping the force field, using the Warp Prism to spot beyond the sight blockers so he could do those force fields, and just cutting down the key units of soO. And when soO's in this spot where he doesn't have a Hydra Den, he doesn't have lurkers, there's no hive tech, he just has to keep making more roaches. So what does Stats do? Never go to the high ground, never over-eager, never trying to force it. He's just constantly making soO feed him these units that are not going to take him to the late game. And eventually soO, realizing the writing is on the wall, committed to a fight he could never win. Stats is forcing soO to dance to his music, and it's a thing of beauty to watch, Maynard.
Certainly is. Well, soO will have to put on his own tunes and turn the music up. This is just not good enough at the moment for game number 1 against someone like Stats. He's going to have to do a little bit better in game number 2. We'll see what the map's going to be and start talking about these players a little bit more. Let's get into it, guys. In the top left, currently down in the series from Team Chivo, make some noise for soO! And in the bottom right from Splice, the Red Protoss with a great game 1. This is Stats!
Maynard, not another second place, please. Stats
Please,
playing top tiers. StarCraft II is playing the best Protoss I think I've ever seen. It's just a thing of beauty. I love the guy, but soO, No, not like this, man. And he did it again. He attacked himself into a win in the previous semifinal. But Stats, they talked about it at the analyst desk. He is something else. He will be the aggressor. If you attack into him, that's fine. He's also the shield of ire. When he's out there fighting, you better have something more, Maynard. You were talking a little bit about this. If it's just roaches and you're hoping to beat Stats by what? Outproducing him? Forget about it. It's just not going to happen.
He didn't even have that many, that much Immortal production. Just, I think it was just one
One
robotics facility.
robo.
And
Yeah.
he just consistently made Immortals after getting the amount of reservers he wanted. He had 7 Immortals with +2 attack in that final engagement. What the hell are 40 extra supply of roaches with +1 going to do?
Yeah, off creep too, right?
Yeah.
Like, soO did not know where he was at in that game, and that's kind of what's being exposed right now. So it's gut check time. We're on Cyberforest. This is one of the smaller, if not the smallest map. That could be good and bad for Zerg or Protoss, to be honest with you. And I know that's the most wishy-washy thing we've heard
very
in a while.
caster-y of you.
It's very caster-friendly, but my point is, if you're thinking about being the aggressor, you kind of have to commit to it, or you got to have something weird going on behind it. Because if you get deflected and you cut your workers, well, guess what, buddy? He's coming after you, and you don't have a whole lot of room.
The SOO's going for a bit more of a modern ZDP style. We've seen it a bunch in this tournament, a bunch of the online cups as well leading up to this, and in GSL, where the Zergs aren't waiting until 2 minutes 30 to get their third base. They're dropping it before 2 minutes. Greed is the name of the game, and lava production is the name of the game in the early stages here for Zerg. You can also turn it, if this was dark, you could also just use that lava to make a bunch of units and go across the map, you know? There's really a lot of options when you go for this, and it keeps the Protoss guessing.
Now, we've seen that this Overlord has a one-way mission. Game 1, it did this. Game 2, it's going to do it, and it should be rewarded with that information. It's a quick robo, which we kind of initially talked about as being an anti-Nidus type of thing. I think it still functions that way, but it also is the beginnings of something weird, right? We've seen Immortals in a Warp Prism with charge lot behind it, like no gas mining. It's a crazy all-in, but Stats could do it. We've also seen it be like, okay, it's scouted. I guess I'll just go right into an Archon drop. It's a really nice kind of launching board, if you will.
I don't think we've seen a Twilight Council just yet from Stats, just the Robo so far. I mean, the Robo almost always means aggression. It means that you don't want to just make 3 observers and then go, all right, I'm done. No, you get a Warp Prism, you send units across the map. We're seeing that Warp Prism in production right now. Still no Twilight Council, so potentially just a Gateway Army harassment attack here, which is kind of something that Hero showed us a little bit in his series as well, albeit, you know, got shut down pretty hard by SOO.
I'd kind of love it if it's the 2 Adept Warp Prism play. Because I think we all had this, every single Protoss player on planet Earth had the same reaction when Hero was doing it. We're like, this is really cool. I mean, and that was maybe the only time we said that about stuff that Hero was doing. But like the 2 Adepts in a Warp Prism was pretty sick. Now, Sentry's going to come out here, and Warp Gate's going to finish in a second. I think, is that a Stalker? It is a Stalker in the Warp Prism. So he still has the option to harass. But as we can see, there's no Gateway Explosion. Double gas is being added. So this is just dropping a Warp Prism on the head of your opponent and saying, you got to kind of keep your eye on this. And if you don't scout gateways, it could be, you know, 7 or 8 gateways behind that. So it's a little bit of a scare tactic. I like it.
He's using this Warp Prism with the Stalker to try and gun down this this Overlord, but it's flying over what I think is a cybernetic tree or a clothesline.
It is, yes. It was a Christmas sometime in the distant future, and that is what it looks like at this point in time. But you know what? It's actually really nice for SOO. As these Stalkers are kind of waffling this way and that, guess what? This is not what this build's intended to do, right? It's not like I opened a Warp Prism and 2 Stalker and I sniped the 1 Overlord annoyingly in the middle of the map. It's like, nope, that's not what you're trying to do. This is great for SOO. Says, yeah, go ahead. Spend all the time you want over there.
That's where this Overlord is warping in more Stalkers, getting +1 attack and Immortals with that Twilight Council coming down. I start to think, Jeff, is this going to be a Blink build?
Well, that would be weird. That would be super weird. Yeah.
It would be. You just don't see it anymore. Of course, back in the day, and I mean way back in the day, Blink +2 timings were very, very popular in this matchup. But it's just fallen to the wayside to Adept Resonating Glaives to charge lots. Nice little bit of micro here from Stats. Woody's first person can. This is the best Protoss in the world, guys. Enjoy it.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. So precise, such amazing actions. I believe it is still Immortals coming off that. It should be some kind of timing behind this. Maybe it's like a recon-based timing, though, right? Like if he sees a certain thing out there, it gets a certain amount of damage done, he goes for it. It's going to be charge. That is the more normal thing in the meta right now. Blink in the heyday of MC was fantastic, but it's really hard against these Zergs that know that you just kind of swarm that style these days. Fight, get a surround, kill, and win. And it is going to be that third.
I like this four Stalker into the War Prism play. I like it. It kind of is. It's a cheaper version of the Archon drop. You know, yes, it has less hit points. Yes, it does less damage and it doesn't do splash damage, but it still serves the same purpose. You clear creep. You can potentially pick off a queen here and there, maybe drone harassment, that sort of thing. So I kind of like that. Seeing some modern PvZ come before our very eyes. Bit of a gateway explosion here in the main base for Stats, as well as a Templar Archives charge and +2 again. And I mean, Stats has just always been ahead in these upgrades.
Yeah.
It's looking really, really powerful already.
Stats is playing really well, but I want to give a tip of the hat here to soO. soO's breaking pace. He's going to go straight to Hydra there. There is some roaches being added to the mix as well, but this is a low econ 3 base. He's only at 53 drones, and keep your eye on that production tab to see if he adds more. Maybe, well, I don't think so. He might trickle out a few more, but for the most part, it's going to be Roach, Hydra, and he says, listen, your opening was cute, you fought back the creep, but this is the smallest map. If I could just escort a couple of creep tumors to mid-map, I basically have half the map covered in creep, and from there I can launch the kind of aggression that wins games. 10 roaches being added behind this as well. Now it gets scouted. It doesn't see the Hydra Den wobbling. That's also kind of weird, right? That usually suggests some kind of timing is coming your way because he's not even going to be bothered for the upgrades.
Well, looks like Stats is feeling confident enough to meet him here. I don't know about this. Maybe he's overextending it. That is a lot of Zerg here, Jeff. I mean, Stats, yes, he does have a better upgraded army, and once again, soO on the lower tech. It just seems like soO doesn't want to play Stats' late game. No, he has no upgrades.
There's no upgrades.
Roach speed, no muscular augments, no groove spines, no Hydra upgrades at all, just link speed. And he's taking the low ground here away from Stats. He's going to start doing damage here. The question is how much?
Stats gives him the low ground. That might be a mistake. We'll have to see how this plays out. Some units are making their way into the natural right now. They're targeting down the Cybernex core. It does die. Good luck blocking off that space. A single Immortal will not be enough. And the army is a little bit arrested. I do think the army of Stats is more powerful, but coming down that ramp into this concave would be really hard to do. So he's just kind of sitting there waiting until now.
And he comes down here, decent enough force fields. A few of these units are out of the fight. Grossophiles to back them down, and soO still maintains this concave, pressing up the ramp here against Hero, or against Stats. He's doing his best. The Hydra's doing so much DPS at the backside. 10 more roaches are on the way, but the army supply is starting to close up. Stats with decent enough micro here with his War Prism. The charge lot's coming in for the natural as well. Stats holds again. soO cannot break this kid.
I cannot believe the patience of Stats to sit up in your third base and let your natural get ravaged just a little bit like that, and then to collapse down. They're microing back the wounded units constantly, leaving the Immortals and Archons to be behind the frontal units and do all of their damage. He's doing just the fundamentals, but he's doing it kind of Serral-esque, right? Like it's all the right stuff, but he's doing them all at the same time, and he's not slipping. soO, I love that shot we got. He looked confused. He's like, wait a second. I think I was up 50-60 supply. Why are you still here?
And that's a question a lot of people are also wondering back at home, is because Stats is a god. He has these upgrades, he has the higher tech army, and he has the War Prism to keep them alive, and the controller do so, and now he has the advantage. soO has sort of hamstrung himself with this attack. He doesn't have much of an economy, he doesn't have a high tech or high upgraded army. He doesn't have any upgrades except for circling speed still. He never started one. I don't even think he has an Evo chamber. So how does Stats get stopped? He's got roach speed finally, but these roaches are once again in a situation where they're going to be up against a lot of Immortals with +2 attack.
I'm absolutely in love with Stats play. Just by being here, he is bullying soO into an inferior position. If Stats wants to capitalize, sure, and it looks like, well, no, he's going to kind of go back and forth here, but like you just pointed out, the upgrades are frozen. +3 attack is on the way for Stats. Are you kidding me? So soO's got to do something here.
He's going to try and go for the Hail Mary, trying to bully himself up the ramp. Stats holding on very strong with these Immortals and Archons holding the line. My God, soO just cannot break through Stats' defenses. He truly is the shield. The reinforcements from the natural doing their best, but the Immortals just hang strong. They've got their hardened shields as well. And Stats is not going to slow down. He can just move to victory here.
The Immortals are all but untouched. That's it. soO says, I'm out of here. Stats 2-0 in this best of 7. He's a couple of maps away from $150,000 and calling himself the IEM Katowice champion and getting himself to that grand final as well. I mean, it's just all across the board. Stats is playing the best StarCraft major, so I have to ask you, I mean, the question becomes, can soO hit a different level? Because in these 2 games, he's getting smothered. I'm not going to say it any other way. They have not been close. It has not been, you know, one player making a critical mistake. soO's playing really well. It's Stats that's playing head and shoulders better than him.
Yes, soO is doing what he wants. He's like, I want to go for an attack before these big scary upgrades finish with a lot more army supply. And while I don't have high-tech units and I don't have a lot of upgrades, I can win with greater numbers. But the answer for Stats has been, no, you cannot, nerd.
Yes.
Get out of my game. Because Stats has always been able to find that defense,
Yeah.
and he just doesn't seem breakable. I feel like for soO to start getting some maps on the board here, he needs to switch gears. These timing attacks, these early game timing attacks, are just not doing it for him.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to catch him off guard with that kind of upgrade-less, slightly faster low-econ Zerg attack, but it seems like it's kind of hard to catch Stats off guard, right? Like, he always does an opening with that War Prism of the 4 Stalkers where he kind of keeps a beat on what you are doing, or in the game before was Archon drop, but always hallucinations behind that. As you said, Maynard, it seems like it's impossible to trick him. You gotta do something else.
Let's see if he can do it here in Game 3 on Kairos Junction. In the bottom right, guys, lend him your energy. This is Team Chivo's soO! It's really getting packed out there. Love this crowd. Make a bit more noise for this guy in the top left. He's dominating the series so far. It is Team Splice's Stats!
Maynard, the bad news gets worse. So Wax Angel, very smart StarCraft guy, found a stat here that I absolutely love, and that is that soO, in every single one of his opportunities for map vetoes, which is everything before this is the map that he said, I do not want to play on against Protoss.
Ruh-roh.
Well, in a best of 7, here it is. And it's game 3. So if he goes down 0-3, it needs to win 4 in a row against Stats, something that nobody here has done, not even close. You're asking the impossible.
This is a map where he will have another life if he loses this one, of course, but it just gets, it's so rough, and you start to lose hope for soO if that's the case. A little bit of micro here from Stats, just trying to deny some mineral mining, not the biggest of deals. Both players still opening very standard as well, just Hashgas pull for soO, and we got a Cybercore into Nexus from Stats. Not the greediest opening, but just respecting his opponent a little bit.
And Stats has gotten to do it his way too, right? Like, it's not like he's mega mixed it up. So far, the first 2 games have been some variety of harass that we've seen. The War Prism with the Stalkers was cute, and it did delay things, but it's not like it messed up soO so traumatically that that's what resulted in the win. It was just another form of that kind of Archon drop harass type of thing. And then from there, he either defends or attacks, but in either way, just manages the game from that perspective. We have not seen a weird tech. There's no been lucky DTs, nothing like that. So soO, who has tried different stuff, right? A timing attack game too, Spire, like all these different things. He's trying to mess up Stats, and he's not getting it done. I'm wondering if he just needs to return to his kind of core game we saw in the semifinal and just win this one out by strong defensive play and then go from there.
Now, Stats is sort of Korea's solid Protoss. You got your Showtime from EU, you got Neeb from NA. Stats is the guy in Korea. He really, truly is the wall. He's so hard to break down. He is so good of a defensive macro Protoss. soO, I mean, because he is so defensive and so macro focused from most of the time in these matchups, no wonder soO doesn't want to face him in the late game. He's like, I don't want him to get that far. I don't want to be a 70 drone 4 base economy, getting to tier 3 Zerg units, trying to deal with Stats in the late game. Maybe he's even more powerful down that road. So,
well, we've seen it, yeah. I mean, that's the amazing thing about him. He does not fall off. So far, not a lot of players have even been able to stay in the game long enough to get there. It's a few more lings than we're a little bit used to. They kind of reveal themselves with that shade forward. These Adepts should not let it finish. They're just going to make their way over to the third, see 0 saturation, all normal stuff. But to finish off my point, Maynard, I think you're right. I mean, what a conundrum Stats kind of forces upon you, right? You literally just have to outplay him to get to any kind of success. And if you can't do that, you're going to lose. And that seems to be what Stats is doing here.
It's the way it should be, Jeff. We got ourselves what looks to be similar to Game 1. All showing the signs of an Archon drop. This time it's going to be the Dark Shrine version of it, not the Templar Archives version, which is a little bit more modern. And we're seeing that so far, a flawless game from Stats, getting a few lane kills, but honestly, not getting any drone kills is pretty nice for soO. He is getting a pretty quick lair, though, with 30 drones. This is pretty quick. Here
it's a pretty quick one. I'm not ready to cry Nidus just yet, but it is the beginning of something here. I do want to see that from Stats, though. I know that sometimes when you're facing a player playing at the level that Stats is, and even if you're a world-class player like soO, he's one of the absolute best. So it's not like he needs to reinvent the wheel here to try and dig out a sneaky win, but I'd like to see him just get the confidence. Now's the time to do it. If you try it all in and that too gets stopped, or some kind of cheeky timing attack, and all of a sudden the 3 things you've tried that are kind of one-offs all fail, I think you're mentally already beaten. So I want him to just say, hey, let's take it to the late game. Let's take it to the strong mid game where I'm not skipping all the speed on my units. I'm not down 2 or 3 attack upgrades. give soO the equalizer stuff, micro it out in the middle, and I think he could do it.
So similar to game one, this layer probably just means Overseers and Roach speed, as you've got the Roaches on the way here for soO to be able to defend against the Archons, which honestly you should. A lot of Zergs do that. But it's just, the question remains, will soO continue to make Roaches? Will he get across the map? This time the Dark Templar are going to try and find damage here. There's one Spore Crawler, they could cut through that.
Wow, they just get right on top of it. They just walked right over and just got right on top of it. An Overseer is just now being made. How does Stats know? He's not going to work on it so far. He wants to keep the health on that Warp Prism alive because losing the DTs would be way worse. I don't think he'll get this hatchery. The Overseer's about to finish.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't want to lose these DTs. soO obviously he doesn't want to lose that hatchery. He does keep it alive. Stats expanding behind this, getting his third Nexus, putting a pylon next to it as well. He's got a nice little choke point just in case there's a Link counterattack, which a lot of Zergs like to do. But soO just seems so reliant on Roaches in this matchup that these run-bys, these things that I'm used to seeing from Zerg don't really happen from him until the mid-game.
Yeah, he seems to be able to deny all of that. Worth mentioning, by the way, that was a scary moment in time, but soO expertly defended it, I have to say. He took some damage on the hatchery, but that's about it. Didn't really lose much else, and it could have been disastrous there, but ends up not being this. The Archons are going to go to work on the creep here. Adepts coming back forward. At this stage of the game, they're just about nothing, so if they can get on top of a mineral line, kill 3, 4, 5 drones, that's absolutely amazing. They don't add much to the composition unless you intend on adding glaives, but that'd be kind of weird.
Good little bit of creep denial here. A lot of those really active tumors for soO. I mean, this clears up creep in the main base, potential more War Prisms. Nice control to keep that Queen alive. 7 hit points in a dream. And getting rid of all this creep means that attacking later for Stats is much easier. And also on the other side of this table, moving out for soO is a little bit more difficult, and he doesn't have tabs at this War Prism play. We're seeing that this time, soO is actually going for something a little bit different here. He did get a Hydra Den relatively quickly, but he's getting an upgrade on it. He's not going for that big timing attack that he did on Cyber Forest. This time, he's getting them defensively, at least for now.
Yep. Gonna go for range first there. 9 Hydras about to pop out. What's really just amazing to watch about this, by the way, is the map control, right? Like, even the Adepts show up. I don't think they got much done, if anything. The Archons fighting back so many creep tumors. So this is what the Adepts are gonna do. It's gonna be, should just be the 2 drones. Yep, not a big deal either way. But soO's not across the other side of the map. He knows of the third, like conceptually. I don't think he scouted it literally, but he should just know that that's about the time a Protoss has the third. But he's just about, he has no idea. He has nothing, he has no ability to harass that. When he does push across the map, look how contained the creep is. He doesn't even have that many active creep tumors. Like, that's, I think, one of the only ones. It's going to the top of the map. I don't care. Go to the top of the map. Who cares?
Well, I mean, soO did make a big bowl of Hydralisks here. He's getting Groove Spines, so it still looks like he's just chilling on creep. If you want to go across the map, Muscular Augments, which we're seeing in the production tab right now, is a little bit more important. Gives those Hydras a little bit more speed, which means that they can actually leave battles if it goes badly, and also reinforce those Roaches a little bit easier.
Stats is just smothering him. 14 Roaches coming out. soO is either making this, I mean, this kind of army has to be very defensive. It can turn offensive, obviously. And our wonderful observer just pointed out that there's no gas in the third for Stats, so he's thinking about being pretty aggressive. But we'll see here. If Stats fights into this, I don't like his chances. Most of his army is mostly Zealots, but so far what he's done is come in, gauge the Predator, and say, okay, maybe now's not my time, and then back up.
I actually do like this quite a bit for soO on paper, but this isn't going to be the first time we've seen soO 60 army supply up and still lose a fight. But there isn't really like a high ground for Stats like there were in a lot of games where soO was the aggressor. This time soO's the defender. I don't know, soO. He's getting off creep here and trying to chase down this Protoss army. I mean, yeah, maybe he gets a couple Zealots, but there's those force fields and he's going to lose a handful of Roaches.
This is not the right fight for Stats, though. Even with the force fields, most of his army's Zealots. It's not backed up by the huge number of Immortals.
Where you going, mate?
Not anywhere good, that's for sure. He's going to have to back up here. Immortals taking damage there as well. And finally, soO finds himself with a pretty good fight. Stats pounced on something where even the force fields couldn't save him. One Immortal gets sniped, another one should die here. He doesn't have that many left over. And all of a sudden, soO's up huge supply, but he's got to be careful about over-pursuing.
There is a bit of a choke point here for the Protoss to be able to utilize, but he doesn't have that much force field energy, which gets me a little bit worried for Stats to be able to stop this big concave of Zerg. I love what soO's doing here, breaking down the rocks to be able to give himself a lot more surface area. He's collapsing on the third Nexus. Is this soO's time? These Hydras doing a lot of damage with their +1 attack from the back line. Stats doing what he can with what he has. He does have a reinforcement of Charge Boss on the left-hand side. The Immortals doing damage in the middle, but this time the defensive line is being broken. soO is starting to chip through the defenses of Stats. Stats Prism Micro is godlike, but soO's just got great numbers. These Hydras keeping him pay. He's up 80 army supply now. Stats cannot hold on, and soO is just poised to get himself a map win here against Stats.
And finally, he finds the fight that he's been looking for in 3 games now on his worst map. Stats taps out soO, strikes back, and I'll tell you what, Maynard, this is a map he was trying to avoid. This is a fight, a composition we've seen before. It was Stats that cut a couple of corners to try to get a bigger swath of Zealots out there, and against the Roach backbone of that army, I'll tell you what, this is how close it is for these guys. He took one moment and said, I'm going for it. He threw down the force fields, the Zealots went forward, but it was like just precisely the wrong fight. He disengaged as Stats does. He's so good about kind of recognizing a bad situation, but by then it was too late, Maynard, and he got chased all the way back to his third, and without any sentries, any ability to stop that army from getting on top of him. By the time he was fighting, he was already losing his third.
Yeah, for once, soO showing that he can be such a strong defensive Zerg. Stats trying a timing tack on for size, and didn't really fit for him. soO was all over, even with the creep denial. It looked good on paper there for a little bit, but as far as the army supplies go, soO just read the situation. He's like, all right, I get Groove Spines, which is the most important upgrade for Hydras if you're being defensive. Extra range, a lot more important than speed is when you're on creep defending. And he just got that army count up, and it was a pretty one-sided battle. There was some nice force fields for Stats when he was retreating way off creep, but after the sentries are gone, force fields are gone, you cannot stop 60 extra supply of Zerg. The micro potential is just not really there.
I wonder if this game comes back to haunt Stats, because like you pointed out, he was murdering the creep. There was nothing in the middle of the map. He was absolutely containing him. He was on 3 bases. Guess what? soO was on 3 bases. He wasn't even like that densely saturated. He didn't have this mega bank, some huge switch behind that. soO was kind of, once again, all in on the idea of getting it done with his Roaches and Hydras, but he was gonna have to go across a map without any creep to kind of get him there in a quick way. It was gonna be rough, but it was actually Stats that thought he would change the pace and be the aggressor, and it was the wrong call.
And I doubt that Stats is the kind of guy that's going to make too many of those mistakes over and over again, knowing that he can just adjust. With extra maps under his belt, he is, of course, in an advantageous spot in this series, but at the moment, only 1 map ahead on soO. It's wonderful to see him fight back here. I'm glad we got ourselves a bit of a series that soO actually can go toe-to-toe and make Stats bleed.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how fast the dynamic of these best ofs change, right? 2-0 and a best of 7. You're not there yet, but you're getting close. You win that 3rd game, and then it's 3-0. And it's like historic the amount of times that people have taken a 3-0 lead and lose that best of 7. And when I say historic, I mean it doesn't happen often. It's a very hard thing to see happen. But at 2-1, we have a basically brand new series in the sense that soO is starting to believe. He did it on his worst map. He did it against the same kind of thing Stats has been doing. I mean, yes, he stopped the gases third. Yes, he had fewer probes and went for an attack. But it's still Stats. He disengaged when he realized it was sour. He pulled back. He had his Immortals not getting touched. Like, he had all the elements there. It was just a couple of little things that divided the difference between win and loss.
Very excited to get into the next map here to see which players decide what they're going to do here.
Yeah.
The crowd getting fired up. No doubt it's for StarCraft.
Absolutely. Why else would you ever attend a gaming event, as far as I'm concerned? But Stats did take a little bit of a break, stepped off the stage. It's going to take a moment here in this final moments of the tournament. Katowice getting fired up. A lot of great stuff happening here. Beautiful stage. I guess at this time, it's also worth mentioning, I want to give a shout out to everyone that made this possible, of course. The wonderful team at IEM. We have some great observers. Mapu, Koka, Indy. These are fantastic guys who have been doing it all week long. And then our fellow co-commentators, everyone. Amazing to work with. We have a lot of laughs back there, as you can imagine. A lot of laughs.
I hope it's really come through the broadcast for all you guys watching at home, but this has been one of the most fun events that I've ever worked at in the, I guess, 6 years I've been doing international casting. You, a lot longer. This has been so much fun. We're all such good friends, and we're having such a great time. The crowd helps a lot as well, you guys, with all your energy, with all your love for this beautiful game, the greatest game in 1v1 esports.
That's been awesome. I'm excited to... The other fun thing about StarCraft II is, of course, when we get home, there's talk shows, and there's future events, and there's... All we do is talk more about this, right? Like, this tournament will be talked about for the rest of the year, because it's one of the... I mean, it is the premier event outside of the actual gigantic world championship, and that's not even said lightly, and it gives a run for the money at that event as well. This is the place to be. So
Yeah.
we're really blessed and honored.
Certainly. It's one of those few events where all the regions come together to battle to see who truly is going to be on top in the end.
Yeah.
You know, our world champion, Cyril, the greatest player in the world, unfortunately bowing out a little bit earlier, so we have our all-Korean grand final, but that is the only unfortunate thing about it. These 4 players that went down to 2 all deserve to be here, are all sick of being second place, and are all desperate for this first place win here at the biggest tournament for StarCraft II of the year. And of course, a big seat and a huge payday. So we got to get that seat in the global finals at the end of the year.
Yeah. Stats is back, resuming his position, so we'll get into game number 4 here in just a few moments, and the action will resume.
That's right. All right. Well, both players have had a chance to cool down. We do too, because we were actually getting a little bit hot and sweaty up here. You know, getting very hot under the collar. I'm pretty sure I saw steam coming out of inControl's collar just earlier. I'm literally on fire sometimes during these engagements, but
yeah,
that's why we have a talent manager with a fire extinguisher at the ready. Let's get into it, guys. Map number 4 in the top left here of King's Cove. Getting a win on the board. It is Team Chivo soO. And in the bottom right, the Shield of Ire from Splice. It is Stats.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'll give mine real quick, but normally this is the part of a best of where I start saying, okay, Stats, you just dropped the map, you did something a little bit cheeky. I want you to return to normal. I want you to, you know, go back to what nobody has been able to stop before. I think that's a good option. But also at the same time, if there was ever a time for him to try something even more aggressive and off-pace and weird, it's kind of now. He's got a game to give. It then gets reset to a best of 3. If you do it later, it can be more critical. But at the same time, if you give up another map to soO, momentum's a thing. It's a real thing.
It is, absolutely. There's been moments where soO's actually been ahead in a map in a grand final, and then his opponent, because he just couldn't keep his composure, because you know, he just got emotional. Because we see that soO is actually a very emotional player, and a lot of those shots that we had of Group D back, you know, a couple days ago, soO was just slumping into his chair like he was deflating because of his 0-3 beginning, and that's in that Group D. But I mean, clearly he has the ability to bring it back and focus again, or he wouldn't be here.
Yeah. So we'll see what these players do. There's been slight differences in how they've gone about each game, the 3 games prior to this so far. And it is Stats that kind of cut a few corners and tried to hit his own timing attack in that last one. But we're going to see soO continue with the kind of normal idea here of 3 hatcheries, gas for speed, presumably. He did skip it actually last game. I forgot to mention that. He skipped Ling speed for that faster lair, and that's kind of what allowed him to get the more upgraded Hydras. We're talking about the difference between the range and the speed. The speed, of course, gets them quicker into the fight, and that's great, and it allows them to pursue, but the range actually, ironically, helps them shoot over force fields and get on top of those units at an earlier time. So, strangely enough, that upgrade was hugely important in that last fight.
And the other thing about not getting Ling speed is what were Ling's going to do against Stats there?
Yeah,
Stats had like 20 Zealots in that army.
Yeah.
So Ling's would have just gone up against a tide of charge lots. Once again, soO seems to be delaying Ling speed. Nope, there it is, just a little bit later.
Yep. And it will be a Robo on the flip side here for Stats. Now again, if you build it at this time, and it will get scouted immediately, it is going to be something like that Warp Prism Stalker play that we saw, or at least that's the idea that he's trying to sell. If you go Archon drop off of this, it's just a little bit disjointed and later, so it's just a worse version of that. You can default into it when it gets scouted, but I think that'd be weird, right? Because Stats has put his tech in the same place each game, and soO is scout with the Overlord at the same time. So I feel like if he's trying to be sneaky, it would be somewhere else. It'd be more severe.
Nice little maneuver there from Stats, using that probe to give himself some high ground vision to be able to finish off that Overlord of soO. And it's a nice little macro maneuver there. But of course, he is just powering ahead on 2 next side. That first War Prism's coming out, and I agree with you, Jeff. I think we're going to see some Prism Stalker play here. Just going to try and bully off those Overlords and basically do what the Archons do, but just a little bit cheaper and with a few more units. soO prioritizing mineral income here. He's pulled out of gas. He just wants to get a lot more drones, a lot more Queens out. We haven't seen a Roach Warren from him yet. He's just relying on Lings and Queens.
Yeah, I wonder if he's really giving credit to Stats here as well as being kind of thinking inside the box. Like he scouts that and says, okay, when you do that, you do this Stalker Warp Prism thing, and that's fine and good, but I'm not really in any danger. So maybe I surge up on drones, I delay my tech a little bit, As long as I have speedlings and a few queens, we can do the fight of creep tumors. I'll go about you at that level, but I'll really take advantage of the macro. So let's see if that ends up being the case. It is more stalkers in the middle of the map, and I do feel like it is going to be that play. But it is the double gas of the expansion of stats, by the way, so we're not going to see, I don't think, the weird Zealot timing attack they tried to hit in Game 3.
No, and I think soO switching gears as well. I think he's going to go Ling Hydra in this game. A little bit more of a regular ZVP opening and going, I mean, roaches are still pretty regular, I would say. Normally I'd see a lot of roaches go, huh.
Yeah.
You know, but it is actually so common at the moment. We're seeing an Immortal getting produced from stats back at home. Of course, these Stalkers with the Observer now can start denying creep, and this is basically the point of this opening of stats. Get rid of this creep, get rid of that map vision, make the Zerg a little bit more nervous.
That's the idea. Like I said, though, it doesn't feel like soO's nervous, right? Like, there's still 5 or 6 drones being produced at a time up there. He's just making lings. He has his same number of queens. I like your breakdown of the tech choice. It does look like he's heading towards Hydra Ling Baneling. That has been a composition that's been dominant for a long time in the meta right now. And this Overlord is just arrogantly parked at that third. We're coming up, I mean, it's just in the middle of the open, right? So it's going to die to these sentries. That's no way to go. It scouts the third. The timing of the third's fairly normal. It's anything sooner than that's very quick. Anything later than that's really weird. So we're in a normal spot here.
Yeah, this is actually the most regular ZVP I've seen in this series so far. There's no big timing attack from stats, just getting a third Nexus and staying at home defensively, and there's no timing attack from soO either. This Hydra Ling Bane army, you generally don't attack with it. It's a little bit tough to attack with. It's very, very good defensively, though, when you have creep spread. Can overwhelm and wrap around the Protoss army, and the Hydras do sick DPS.
Absolutely. I think it does do well against the specific kind of push out we've seen from stats, though. He's been pushing out pre-storm, and he's very Zealot heavy, but he's been doing a good job of obviously like not engaging with the Zealots against roaches in a bad situation or something like that. So he's very smart about it. But a lot of times Ling Hydra, even off creep, if it gets a full surround on you, it can run you down. It's the quicker version of that kind of composition we've seen earlier. And then it becomes about those Baneling connections. If they get into the middle of your army, blow up the sentries, blow up the Zealots, you're going to lose that fight if you're the Protoss.
Yeah, Ling Bane Hydra's got a little bit less muscle to it, but a lot more damage output.
Yeah.
And it's very, very good against charge lot armies. If you can get the Banelings inside of a Sentry army or a High Templar army, it's lights out for the Protoss.
Oh,
recall the War Prism, bringing it back home.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I was stuck in a corner. I get it.
Yeah, fair enough. Wish I could recall back to Australia and it wasn't a 20-hour flight.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
That'd be
Jeez
great.
Louise. This Overseer, though, is going to see everything. It sees minimal saturation of the third, and by minimal, I mean literally one probe. It goes. It went through the natural and the main and sees a huge number of gateways being built. So I once again, stats at 48 probes. There's 3 more queued up there, but that's pretty low.
Yeah.
I think he's muscling up for some kind of aggression. We saw the Temple Archives finish, but no Storm queued up immediately.
And soO's not going too crazy on the macro here. Like, yes, he's getting a 4th hatchery, and yes, he's going up into, you know, probably the highest drone count. Well, actually, it is the highest drone count we've seen in this series so far. He's hit 66 drones, and he's doing nothing but making units. I feel like if an attack happens here from stats, and soO's set up for it, he could take a really, really good fight.
Maynard, I agree fully, and I actually really don't like this from stats. He just got the Mega Scout of the Sentry. The Overseer saw everything. Everything, and it's a heavy gateway influx. So stats right now is just saying, even with me being scouted, I don't think you can stop this. And he's going to show up a couple Archons, several Sentries, and just a few Immortals. Good cannon in the back here, otherwise this would have been disastrous. As it is, not great.
I mean, it is still annoying, losing a few probes. The Lings still escape as well.
It's a warp in.
Yeah, and he has to warp in back at home and not here aggressively. Plus,
All right,
the attack is on the way, and there's that Storm. Storm is the death sentence for this army of the Zerg. The Zerg army, like I said earlier, is a flimsy army. It doesn't have a ton of hit points. It's a light army. So Storms really do carve it to pieces. Colossi, of course, another option. But we're going to see the Templar tech here as the path for stats. +1 attack also coming in here, which is not going to help out the Zerglings, but the Banelings as well. So they'll do a little bit more damage. Stats moving through this choke point here. This is a very strong position for stats. And it looks like soO's going to chase him into this.
Wow, he did not expect that. There's some holes in that, but he then plugs it on. Oh, the Baneling connects on most of the sentries, though. And the Hydras are getting their damage in through that. The Archon taking a lot of chip damage. It's quite low in health. He's going to back up. This is just before Storm.
Oh, wow.
It's just before some key upgrades. But if you look at that production tab, it's all soO aggression. He's coming forward with a lot of Lings. Baneling's being morphed over there. Going to the high ground is going to be a tall order, especially with Storm finishing. I feel like this is such a good spot for soO. He's got to be careful not to give it away.
Warp Prism getting a little bit low here. That's a lot of micro potential for this army of Stats if you can keep that alive. Also could get harassment as well. A bunch of Banelings rolling into the third base. Stats evacuating the probes here. Doesn't want to take any of that probe damage, but the Lings coming in with the Hydras, catching an Archon immediately here. The Banelings are still chasing after those probes. The Zealots wash against them, but they take tons of splash damage. soO pressing the issue again. The High Templar managing to get away from those Banelings. The Banelings starting it again. Forcing an Archon, killing a High Templar. soO's army is getting thinned down, but I don't think it's been thinned down enough.
No, it's done so much damage as well. A lot of the probes did die there, and more are dying in the background. The Immortals have nothing to protect them, and that's it. Jack wasn't going to tap out.
Oh, man.
Boy, it looked like he was thinking about it, at least. He might hang in here for a second.
Maybe he was all tapped talking to a friend, but that would be really weird. This is the grand final. He's surrounded these Immortals, and it is looking like it's all over here. There it is. soO's tied it up. We're down to a best of 3, Jeff.
Wow. Absolutely amazing. And I'll tell you what, I said it. I got nervous for Stats. He moved out. He was thinking about doing an attack there. And what's so good about Stats typically, and was good here too, just not good enough, was he said, whoa, wait a second. This is not what I was expecting. You have way more than I thought, and I do not think this fight will go well. But even by the time he backs up, every little mistake he made was a Baneling getting through, was Hydras hitting Archons. And it was just too much. soO was able to capitalize and get on top of the third. Ironically, it was the Banelings, right? Like, they come waddling into the third. He's doing everything he can to scatter away, but in doing so, he donated, essentially, 2 Archons and that high ground positioning, and it was soO that was able to capitalize.
Great couple games here from soO, and they were both very different games. In fact, every game's been quite different.
Yes.
Neither player is doing the exact same thing. While game 1 and 2 looked very, very similar, they were still very different in how they rounded up. There's so many moving pieces in a StarCraft game that each game has had a very unique sort of footprint here in this grand final, with Stats having a lot of trouble there with the Lingbane Hydra, and even on King's Cove, which I feel like is a map that generally as a Protoss you do okay against it. There's a lot of choke points. There's, you know, that big path through the middle. Force fields are a nightmare for a Zerg. You have a high ground third base. You have a high ground natural. It's a hard unit composition to make happen, but soO, he's a god. He made it happen. He made it work.
And Stats with that second loss has lost more games in a best of than he has this entire tournament. He's blanked everybody. He lost 2 games in the entire group stage. He's looked unstoppable. soO is doing something about that.
He certainly is. And if you want to see him keep winning maps, then lend him your energy. Make some noise on the top left for Chivo's soO!
There it is, Maynard. Give me that good stuff.
You want some good stuff? I got some good stuff right here. And the bottom right from Splice. Give it up for Stats!
And Stats is starting to look a little bit rattled, I do have to say. And we're going to get a difference here, maybe. You know, okay, the gateway's a little bit late. It's okay. It's a normal thing. But Stats shaking around a little bit, looking a little bit more sweaty. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be able to read into his mind and make this the biggest of deals. But like I said, this is a Stats that's had an absolutely immaculate run. Nobody has looked close. He's dropped just a couple maps across the board, but only one to anybody. And now, soO, 2 in a row. 1 on his worst map, and 1 right there. And again, it was Stats that actually has won his 2 games off that aggression, right? Like, he's gone forward, and he's looked like he's wanted to kill you, but he backs up, makes the situation amazing, and then gets the win. This last time, shows up, whoops, that's not what I thought could happen, and then loses, Maynard.
Yeah, the suggestions that I was sort of offering for soO in my not very good at the video game brain was basically saying, hey man, you know, you're going for a certain game plan in game 1 and 2. While they do a little bit different, they are essentially the same game plan.
Yes.
We gotta switch gears here. I'm feeling like the same is a little bit on the cards here for Stats. He's shown us very, very similar builds, very, very similar openings. And I think that maybe, potentially, getting a little bit aggressive might work out for Stats a little bit earlier. Maybe an 8-gate charge load attack, something that soO's not expecting, because Stats has got that image of a macro defensive kind of guy.
Yeah. Change up something. And one last time I want to highlight this, because I think this is actually a big deal, especially with Stats, who doesn't give many of these, but he made a mistake. I'm going to move to say that. You can disagree with me if you want, but Stats gets an Overseer running through his natural and his main, literally sees something like 7 or 8 gateways being warped in. You don't just do that. And then he shows up at the third, doesn't see much in the way of saturation. That is only one thing. That's aggression. But then the attack shows up about 2 to 3 minutes later, giving soO all that time to adjust, all that time to set up. And the army that shows up is exactly the one that was scouted. So I don't want to call it arrogance, but it might be some kind of tunnel vision on the big stage where you're saying, no, I'm doing this attack. But a lot of times what makes Stats so good is if that kind of thing gets scouted, he's not all in on that idea. He can back away from it and find something else.
Oh, nice pick off there for Stats. Bit of a blunder for soO to lose that Overlord. He wanted to confirm, is this a Stargate opening or not, by seeing whether or not the Warp Gate was delayed. And that's actually very annoying. 100 minerals in the early stages of the game here, an extra lava that he didn't really want to spend on an Overlord.
Yeah.
That could have been a drone. That could have been a bit more mineral in the back. So, and these are the kind of things that really snowball when you're this closely matched.
Well, you were asking for some difference. If we can look at the unit tab, I believe that Stalker came out, what, first or second, right? Yeah, it came out first off the gateway. Whereas in all 4 of the other games, it was an Adept, then a Stalker, then an Adept, or Adept. So, again, both these players adjusting and kind of calibrating for each other, and it makes a big difference, as you pointed out, Maynard. It is a Stargate, which is the first time this has shown up in this series yet. It's not the weirdest of things. It doesn't catch you fully off guard. But if you've been going one way the entire time, then all of a sudden you switch around and yep, there it is. He's going to wait for a second Oracle. If you skip out on Spores and you're waiting for Queens to try to defend, you're going to lose a lot of drones.
Well, the good news from soO is that while that Overlord did die, it didn't die in vain. He did see the delayed Warp Gate attack, so he knows that it's a Stargate opening.
Yeah.
Spores are up in a timely fashion, and he's droning like a madman back at home, already on 42. And he is ready to switch into the next gear. His Queen count is actually not too bad either. And we're seeing also a Robo and a Twilight Council from Stats. So it's not like a big, cheesy, weird amount of Stargate units.
Right.
It's likely this is going to be just the only 2 Oracles we see in this game, at least for now. And he's going to switch into a more regular sort of follow-up here, Stats.
Well, it's 2 Grandmaster chess players going back and forth. Like, if you didn't scout that, if you weren't as on top of your information as what soO is here, 2 Oracles can show up and kill the greedy Zerg, and that's the cheapest win you've ever seen Stats get. But it's not so easy, right? soO did scout it. There are Spore Crawlers, there are Queens, so this move is not going to get the win that Stats wanted. But to your point, it's not an all-in either. Oracles, of course, find themselves fantastic scouts. They can continue to harass, and they did just force the stack defenses. Actually, they found some greed. Never mind. No Spore there.
Yeah, I mean, the natural is usually the one where the Spore isn't, because it's a little bit harder to fly into, but Stats, on this map, you have a little bit more space. He managed to get into that natural, find some drone kills. soO made a lot of length behind this all, and it looks like he's going to be able to deny that third base. Stats really doesn't have any ground units.
Another mistake. Those units are usually tucked into the minerals where they can kind of minimize space. That's a cancel third. I don't care about these Oracles. They should not be able to reduce this. A little bit of mixed fighting. Did get canceled.
Cancels the pylon as well.
And that's awesome. Amazing. He gets the Zealot, gets the Adept, and then also the cancel. And now it's Stats having to reach into his bag and say, wait a second, things aren't going perfectly for me. What do I do?
Whoa, a spy here from soO. He really doesn't like War Prism stuff. He really doesn't like these Oracles. He can shut them down. It could, of course, be a giant Mutalisk switch. There's always that option. Generally, it's just a half a dozen Mutalisks to shut down these Oracles, to shut down a War Prism. But, I mean, the thing is, the reason why Zergs don't usually go full ham on Mutalisks is because it usually turns into a base trade.
Right.
And that's when things get weird.
Or it just gets put down. If it gets put down, they don't fight very well, right? It can only be a base trade. And the longer the game goes, the harder that gets to pull off as well. So it's just a little bit too risky for some of these players. And if you're as good as soO, you can see why he doesn't opt for that very often. Here comes that delayed Archon drop. So you're going to resume that harass. And the third did get stopped, but immediately resumed after that. So Stats, some speed bumps, but not the end of the world.
Roach is coming down here to help out their Queens. And the Archons are being deflected for now. Nice transfusions from the soO, but likewise nice creep denial from Stats, getting a few of those active tumors there. The third base has got some Zealots on them. They don't have charge just yet. Looks like another Ling run by, but some Zealots with good positioning between the pylon and the Nexus can hold this many Lings.
And they were making their way to the natural to see if he was still being greedy and not making any more
Sees
Spores.
the Spire as well, by the way.
Yep, sees the Spire. Gonna get a couple Queens here. That's a big deal.
Wow. That's a lot more damage than I expected for these two Oracles, and it looks like soO's just like, oh, I'm out of position. This sucks. I'll lose 2 Queens for free. My Spire gets scouted.
Oh my God. Come on.
1 hit point.
Okay.
All right, well, we got a badass over here.
Yeah, we got somebody with somebody who's feeling pretty good right now. And they picked off the Queens too, so they're actually kind of safe tucked in back there. But our observer pointed out that some creep did die in the background, and losing 2 Queens on top of that's going to slow things down. So soO doing what he can. I mean, it's actually amazing the creep spread that he has facing the kind of harassment that Stats has been putting out there. But this has slowed down a little bit.
Oh, soO's in the natural by the looks of things. Those Lings got past that Zealot. Uh-oh, in they come. We're in that first person came there of soO and Stats. Now we're just looking at the game here. The Link's getting on in here, but it looks like Stats is already so ready for this. He's got that cannon because he scouted the Spire. He knew that mutas were a thing. So getting the cannon down there, warping in a few Zealots. He's already producing it's not Vikings. That's a Terran unit. Making Phoenixes to deal with them as well.
Yep. You know what? It's an inexpensive move. It's once again just the the chess masters going back and forth, right? Like those Lings run by some other Protosses, they get 9 probes and scout a critical tech and win the game. In this case, they see that there's photon cannons at each mineral line. They see the explosion of gateways, so that's good, but they didn't get a lot of damage in. Just a nice play, nice thing to check.
Stats is hitting a bit of a window here where soO is sort of tacking into something else. He's not making anything from his Spire. He's actually switching into Lingbane Hydra again. But he hasn't got a big swell of units up yet. He's just producing them now. In fact, he's just lost an Overlord. He's supply block right now. The amount of production he has is limited until his Overlords come out. This window could be the game-winning maneuver for Stats.
Yeah, I believe there's no Storm behind this. Yep, there it is. It's getting queued up right now. So Stats is not all in on this idea. They're very close in supply. I feel like this is once again that comfortable spot for Stats where if you give him the position, he'll take the fight, and it's going to be bad for you. But from going from low ground to high ground, he can't really do it. Now, thankfully for soO, the 4th base is actually the lower left-hand side. And the timing for it's pretty good. I believe it's even partially saturated. So as long as the positioning remains, it's very saturated, remains good for soO, he can take this fight. As you point out, he was caught off guard, but time has gone on, and Zerg produced explosively. So he's got what it takes to stand up to this for right now. He just doesn't want to take a bad fight positionally.
Looks like a lot of his units are coming to deal with this charge lot run by here, which does get deflected, but now Stats know that this is the army of soO. soO's going to get Baneling speed here shortly as well. He's morphing a ton of Banelings. Stats just feels like he doesn't have what he needs to break through here.
Yeah, he's going to back up. He's going to wait for Storm. I mean, he saw the Banelings get morphed on top of the Zealots, or he saw them. Whether or not he looked, we'll have to wait and see. But Storm is the answer. If it is going to be Hydras as the backbone, Lings, Banelings, a couple of good Storms off the backs of Force Fields, and that stuff's gone. soO's also taking a 5th base, and we have not seen a 4th base attempted yet from Stats. So right now, that's going to become a big deal. If Stats gets tunnel vision on 3-base aggression, it's all about that attack then, and falling back to a 4th.
This concave, though, these Banelings are looking for those high Templar. Stats! Got to get those Storms down! The Banelings really nice force fields from Stats! Oh my god! What an engagement for the Protoss!
Those were the most last-second force fields you could possibly have. There's a Zealot run by hitting up the natural, heading up into the main as well. It's mostly Lings coming out for soO. The supplies got very close there. This did win him the position to deny that 5th base. The entire army goes up to the main to deal with like 5 Zealots, which means his 5th is dead, but maybe also the 4th.
Yeah, the 5th is down, and the 4th is the next on the menu here for Stats. And he's all over it. He has high ground as well. In comes the Banelings. Are there more splash damage here? Actually, there's no more Storms in this army when they're looking for Stats, but he has so many Archons to tank on those Banelings. I don't know if soO has the numbers here, man.
I mean, the Roaches are insulating. The Hydra's doing so much damage behind this. Yes, he's kiting backwards, but the health is running low. soO's up in supply. Stats still only on 3 bases. He's put the game on the line right here. Lings coming in to reinforce, and he will be repelled. The Warp Prism getting targeted. It doesn't. Oh, it just gets out, but the Immortals are left behind. And now 117 supply to 92. He's got to find something else.
Oh man, an overextension from Stats. Maybe he thought he had High Templar in that army with a bit more Storm, but there was no splash damage there, and it looked so close for soO, but it really snowballed into his favor there once that front line got dissipated.
Maynard, the entire army of soO went up into the main to deal with 5 Zealots. That's a mistake. I'm not going to... Stats did what we would all do. He's like, okay, kid, I'm going to kill your bases now. But by taking the fight, he put himself in such a perilous spot. Now, soO, yeah, you're up in supply. It's not that much, though. It's going to come down to these Storms, man. If Stats can defend this army, defend this army, it could put him back in the driver's seat.
He's got a few Storms here on these armies, and it has to be nice Storms. Nice breakaway on these Banelings from soO. He gets a bit of damage, but he still has primarily more Banelings here in this army. A lot more Lings are coming through. Both players in a relatively low economic situation, which is not so great for the Zerg. The Banelings getting they connect with the High Templar there. The Archons are being morphed, which is not part of the battle. The Zealots are going into a concave of Zerg units here. soO doing the damage again.
There's just not enough. The Zealots are getting warped in, but they're dying just as fast. 129 supply to 74. Stats is dead again. And soO's won 3 in a row. He's one game away.
This kid was 0-3 in the group stages. He should not be here, but he is. He's earned his seat, and he is on match point against the best Protoss in the world. What a series from soO.
Maynard, my heart can't take it. I was asking for a Game 7 earlier. I'm actually going to move to say I take it back. I don't...
Be careful what you
soO
wish
has
for,
won
man.
3 in a row. He's 1 map away from removing one of the biggest gorillas on someone's back I've ever seen in my life. This guy has had to stand up there and answer questions like, how does it feel? You lost 5 GSLs in a row. You just can't seem to get there. And he's been so he wears his heart on his sleeve. He's been nice about it, right? He's saying, I'm out there trying. It's a big honor. And here he is on one of the biggest stages in all of StarCraft in Katowice, Poland. If he could do this, if he can overcome stats and win this championship, you will see the liberation of someone's soul like you've never seen before, man. He wants this so bad.
Can taste it. But he's been in a situation before, Jeff.
Oh my God.
Not here in Poland. He's been in a situation before. In a best of 7.
How dare you.
He's seen this third map. It's the 4th one, Jeff.
Oh, Maynard, don't.
It's always the 4th one for soO.
No.
I want to believe.
If Stats wins this next one, yeah, you're going to be solo casting the final map because I will be under the table in the fetal position. It's just too much. And I mean, on the flip side here too, Stats starts off 2-0. It looked like everything that soO was trying was null and void. It just doesn't work that way, okay? And then in game 3, Stats once again reaches into what he's been doing and just barely comes short. But man, what a series we've had so far, Maynard.
We are getting into map number 6. Guys, I can't believe it, but he's on match point in the top left from Team Chimu. Make some noise for soO! It's all for this and for the money, and let's see that BlizzCon in the top right. Can he fight back? Let your Protoss heart sing for Splice's Stats!
Oh man. I take back my take back. I do want a game 7, right?
Being indecisive.
There's just so much on the line. We've been following these guys for years. They're just such good players. They've won their championships, but tragically, this Final Four, it's been amazing for all of them. The kind of defining factors, the championships they didn't win, right? They keep getting there and someone stops them. Well, one of these two guys was always going to be crowned, but the way this is going down is amazing. soO down 0-2. Has struck back again and again and again and found himself one map shy of a big championship for this guy.
I mean, it's annoying for Stats as well, right? He's come second the last 3 big finals that he's been in. GSL versus the World.
To a Zerg.
The World final, to a Zerg. He just falls in that grand final. And he's like, oh man, this is so frustrating, I want to be first. soO's like, get back to me when you've lost 11 of them, okay?
Jeez Louise. Well, the map is Year Zero. This is one of the favorite maps in the map pool. It's very long. You start up top left and top right. There's a lot of distance in between you. You can expand up and down, or you can expand closer to your opponent. Kind of depends on the style. And so far with Stats, we've seen a lot of push, dictating the pace from there. But from soO, I have to say, it's been that Hydra tech. I know it's kind of a weird thing to say. A lot of players have been going very Roach heavy. And yes, you can find some wins with that, of course. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. But it has not found success against Stats. It was the Hydra Ling Baneling. And Maynard, I thought you called it beautifully in that last game. Like the first 3 waves of Banelings did nothing in that final engagement. 2 Banelings get through, detonate on 4 Templar and a couple of Sentries, and it took out the backbone of Stats' army. Yes, he had some Immortals, but if you're just warping in Zealots without Force Fields and Storm to kind of insulate the fight, you're probably losing that one. And it was close, but those Banelings, man, they were huge.
And to talk about the map for a second, Year Zero is very, very large. There's a lot of space here for the Zerg to get away with things like what soO's gone for. Again, I doubt that this is going to be the kind of map where we're going to see what we saw in Game 1 and 2, where, what up, Space Satan, good to see you again. What we saw from soO in Game 1 and 2 was a big Roach Hydra attack with low upgrades, high army supply, and just trying to overwhelm the defensive position of a Protoss. This map is very, very tough to make that happen. You can break down these rocks to the north side of the map and have a short distance between your opponent's and your base as well. But it is still just a long rush distance. So Lingbane Hydra, creep spread, seems to, on paper at least, seem the better path here for Zerg against Protoss.
And Stats is once again most likely going to lean in on this Stalker Warp Prism play. And as Maynard just broke down on a big map, I actually like this a lot more. He did it on Cyberforce, which I thought was a little bit weird because it's such a small map that only a couple of Tumors basically get the job done. But on this map, if you can keep the creep on the Zerg side and really fight it back there, it could be impossible, because by the time your army moves out and gets across, you're so slow and you're having such a tough time getting over there on this large, long map that the Protoss is adjusted and defends very well. And then we get to the Mega Late game, which we haven't had yet, by the way. Both these players aren't necessarily super afraid to get there. It's just been such an aggressive matchup so far that we haven't.
If Stats has ever intended to get to the late game, where he seems to be so powerful, soO has never not let him get there.
Yeah.
Whether it be at his fault or at his benefit.
Right.
We're seeing that Stalker Prism opening here from Stats again. He's trying to find more damage. soO, Wings already in position. Creep Tumors getting body blocked away. Pretty nice defense so far here from the Zerg.
Yeah.
And also coming in here, confirming that the Robo's being chrono boosted. He knows Immortals are on the way here as well.
Queen being queued up, some Lings. I'm keeping my eye on that production tab very closely. Todd somewhere looking at the supply. Jeff here looking at the production tab. But it's still drones coming out, Roach Warren, so I do feel like we'll kind of land on some normalcy. All the talk about the Nidus this entire week, it has been a big deal, don't get me wrong, but so far in this, well, the tournament part of the bracket, we've seen none of it for the most part.
Yeah, the last couple days.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been used. I mean, even Cyril said in his interview, like, I don't use that strategy. It's not something I like to do in my games. And soO, likewise, not really showing it to us. We are seeing these Stalkers getting deflected again. The Lings and the Queens, all you need. Stalkers really are, I guess the biggest detriment for the Stalker opening versus Archon opening is that they really aren't that great against a bowl of Speedlings like Archons would be. But of course, this means that soO does not need Roaches, which he normally would at this stage of the game, and he's getting a Hydrodan already, plus 1 attack.
It's interesting, because he did get the Roach Warren, so it's not like he doesn't have that, unless he canceled and I didn't see it, but he is going straight to Hydras, and that's been the right call. So there's Roach speed, there's +1 range. soO, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Like, it's just, he was too heavy on the Roach Ravager the first couple of games. It's been about Ling, Baneling, speed, and we talked about this big map a lot in relation to the Protoss getting from free space and winning from there, but it's worth mentioning as well, soO, if you can get to that maxed out mid-game, tons of Lings flying around, Banelings trying to make their connections, that's a good part of the game for him as well, and Stats has not looked to be immaculate, right? Like, he's missed a couple of things, and it's cost him. He's actually...
Soul Train,
he's actually going for it.
Yeah. He's an Immortal Sentry attack.
There's Hydras already coming out.
I mean, I'm a little worried here for Stats, I'm not going to lie.
Is this how it happens?
I don't know. That's a lot of creep spread, dude.
Is he going to fight on creep with this?
That's so much creep spread. He does have an Observer, so yes, he can start to push it back, but...
The third base is not being
slow
scouted.
Zealots, lots of Sentries, so much space here for the Zerg. I don't know, Stats.
This is scary. This is scary for both players. He's pushing forward now. The Zerg is somewhat contained. He's trying to fight a good, well, he gets 3 Hydras, fights back those Hydras, they're back. Ling's gonna die on the bleed out here, but that's a lot of his Sentry energy, and I wonder if that was too much of an expenditure.
soO's also about to have Groove Spines, so we can fight over those force fields like you mentioned in earlier games here. 14 Sentries! That's a lot of force fields, but it's not a great fighting army, Jeff.
Oh, he just goes right down the middle there. The Queens are getting trapped, though. If he can get on top of that, get the damage down on that base right there, Link's coming out in production, won't be that big of a deal, but he's running low on energy. So much is gone. Supplies are still in favor of soO. He's up in army.
Oh my.
Roaches are on top of this. There's a massive orphan, but he's out of sentries. It's just straight fighting right now against 3-base production.
Well, he does have some Stalkers coming out, which are very nice against these Roaches. He's forcing evacuation here at the third base. soO coming in for the natural with those Queens and those Hydras. He needs a few more Hydras and a few more Roaches here to stand and fight. Stats is starting to lose a bunch of units, but soO has lost a lot of drones. Is this it? Can Stats break through? soO's got that concave. He's pressing it back. The Prism is in danger here for these Queens. Starting to take the damage here. soO's just standing and fighting. Is this it?
He's done it. The War Prism's gone. There's no third base behind this. That's gonna be it, Stats! You attacked yourself into a corner, and he taps out! soO's done it!
Oh, he's done it! The curse has been broken here in Poland! soO, you magnificent! You magnificent!
Oh my God.
Done it in front of all of us here, in front of tens of thousands of viewers, like 100,000 viewers here in the arena. We have seen magic happen on stage here so many times in Poland. This year, 2019, is no different. What a final, and what a showing from the Zerg. I'm so happy for him. I'm actually almost in tears for soO. I know how this feels. This is so incredible.
Oh, that's the smile of relief, Maynard. He's gonna lift the trophy. You've done it, soO. You worked so hard. He's gotten here before. He's came so close. But this time, here in Katowice in 2019, this man was able to reach up and grab that trophy. He's at the bottom of the group. Earlier, just a couple of days ago, he was down 0-2 here, but he prevailed. He did it again. He was able to fight forward, believe in himself, and get that win.
soO is nothing short of a god, and keep in mind that he took out the world champion on the way through. Oh man, let's switch to the stage for an interview with our champion, soO.
Wow, soO, you have been to 11 grand finals here in Katowice. You told us that you didn't even expect to make it this far, but you have finally done it. You are the Intel Extreme Masters World Champion. 일단 축하드리고요. 결승전만 11번이나 갔었고 이번 월챔에서도 여기까지 올라올 거라는 것을 예상도 못했었다고 했는데 드디어 우승자가 된 소감 얘기해 주세요.
아 진짜 올해가 진짜 마지막이라고 생각했는데 이렇게 마지막에 그래도 우승할 수 있어서 너무 좋습니다.
He said, I came into this Katowice knowing that this could potentially be my last time coming here. To be able to become the champion here at my potential last time being here is just an absolutely phenomenal feeling. And so this series, you fought back from such a difficult position. At one point, you were down 0-2, but from then on, you were able to bring it back. So tell us what was going through your head. 좀 불리하게 시작을 했는데 0-2로 지고 있을 때 무슨 생각을 하셨나요?
그냥 이번에도 안 되는구나 싶었고 나의 한계는 여기까지인가 보다라는 생각이 들었는데 그래도 최선을 다해보자라는 생각이 좋은 결과 나온 것 같아요.
He says, when I was down 0-2, I just thought to myself, God, it's happening again. Maybe this is really just the limit of the skill that I have. Maybe this is it for me once again. But I thought to myself, let me just show the absolute everything that I have. I just wanted to do my absolute hardest. And I think it was because of that I was able to really channel all the energy I had into my next 4 wins to eventually go on and become champion. And Sue, it's just so apparent you're feeling so much right now. Lastly, any words that you have? 마지막으로 하고 싶은 말이 있나요?
우승하는데 이렇게 오랜 시간이 걸렸는데 지금까지 기다려준 팬분들에게 항상 감사하고 아직 끝이 아니니까 계속 열심히 노력하겠습니다.
He says, it took me so many years, such a long time to become champion, so I just want to give a huge thank you to all the fans who waited for me. And this is not the end of me, so please keep cheering for me. Once again, give it up for your Intel Extreme Masters World Champion. It is soO!
Oh my God, I'm right there with you, Smix. This is an unbelievable moment, and what a welling up of emotions for that man right there. soO has crowned himself a world champion. He has finally caught his white whale that he has been searching for years and years. Guys, what a moment. I was almost in tears just then as well. This is amazing.
Never give up, never surrender, no matter how many times you fall down. This man shows that you can just keep getting back up again. And finally here at the end of such a long road, no player expects it to take half a decade from your first championship finals to actually winning one. But he's finally done it.
I just want to say, James, it's really messed up. You're cutting up onions in front of all of us right before we go live. It's super unnecessary to do that.
We're all on the verge.
But we're professionals, so we're going to keep this together. Man, like, sometimes you want to talk about StarCraft, sometimes you want to talk about the games, but sometimes the story is so much freaking bigger than the games. And
yeah.
It's actually amazing. Like, I honestly thought Stats was going to win, and after the first 2 games, I was like, please let him win a map, at least give us a real finals. And he turned it around. He didn't just level up, he tripled up or something. I don't know where he got it from, but suddenly soO became what we all knew he was capable of. But oh my goodness, it's actually beautiful.
It's truly amazing. And actually, with everything in the bracket leading up to this, I didn't believe I was also going to feel all of the emotions that I'm currently feeling right now. No. Never mind what soO is feeling right now. This is actually crazy. A lot of us, all of us on the desk here, we were thinking, high favorite, Stats is going to be able to do this. And it didn't look good for soO at the beginning of it all, but he turned it around somehow, some way. He comes out on top. It's a magical moment here in Katowice.
Well, we weren't mentally prepared for a reason, James. It's because he's been to the finals, he's been up before, and he wasn't ever able to close it out on such a big stage. And part of me, even there, when he was up to 3 games, kind of didn't fully believe that he would be able to pull it together. And you can imagine he had to fight that voice as well. He more than anyone has that voice of doubt in the back of his head, but he's overcome it here today. He pulled together some incredible games and just poised in the face of the biggest moment of his career.
And like I said before the finals as well, the irony, there were so many tournaments where soO came in as one of the top favorites, looked like the favorite in the round of 32, the round of 16, the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and it always went wrong. Coming into this tournament, he was an outsider. He's always a dangerous outsider, but he wasn't one of the top 4, top 5 picks. You look in the group stage, he's almost down and out. If he would have lost 1 map more in the round of 24, where you play 5 best of 3s, 1 map, he would have been out. He wouldn't have made it into the bracket. The bracket began and he showed us things that we didn't even know he was capable of. The ZVZ versus soO, it's not just a championship, it's one of the very biggest. A lot of people say the biggest, second biggest tournament of the year.
Yeah.
And he did it by defeating the reigning world champion soO in the quarterfinals. He demolished Hero, and now he just beat the best Protoss player in the world as well. Like, it doesn't become much more beautiful than this.
Simply sensational. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been quite the road here at the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice, and soO has proved that if you keep going and following your dreams will come true. Impressive stuff from soO. What a win. He is your Intel Extreme Masters champion.
Something in the air tonight. I'm gonna have to reach for new heights. And if I have to stand alone, I'm not afraid to face the throne. The enemy is all around. The walls crumble as I watch them fall down. Is this my final fantasy? Every single time I hear you say, if I rise, I will not crash, I will not fall.